Nox, Luna's jungler.
Thank you very much. Very happy, PvP sales. And you were explaining to me just before what they actually usually call you, the Russian casters?
Okay, the Russian casters call me Stajor.
And what does it mean?
It's like associate, so low-tier worker.
Okay. Stahot? Okay. Well, you weren't a low-key worker in this one. You did amazingly. I want to ask you about the team comp. We thought, what is Albus Nox Luna going to do? Is it going to be a crazy team comp? Is it a special plan? But you went for a very normal, conventional team comp. Why in this one versus CLG?
Well, when versus G2, we thought that they're pretty hard, like mechanically. So versus CLG, we thought that they are very good as a team, and if we won't do bad stuff in the early game, we will have a good possibility to win the game if we pick later team comp. So at the start of the game, me and Smurf outsmarted like Xmitty. It was pretty obvious moves that they dive top lane, and after that, the game was very easy for me as a jungler.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. We look at ANX, we look at Kira, we look at Liquid has so much hype. Tell me about PvP sales as a jungler in Albus Nox Luna.
Well, I started jungling only this year, so I play since season one in League of Legends when I was around 14, and like I started as an AD carry, got high elo, then got to top lane, and in this year I am like a jungler. So it's like a first year of jungling for me.
Yeah, first year of jungling, you made it to Worlds, and you might be the first team from the LCL to make it out of groups. Tell me, how are you thinking about the rest of your day? If you win all 3 games, you make it, but there are a lot of possibilities. What's your mindset like? How do you keep calm and just bring it home for your region?
Well, at the start, when we only qualified, we thought that, okay, we got like group of the death, so G2, the rank 1 from the Europe, rank 2, if I remember well, from NA, and like Rox Tigers, like the best top laner in the world and stuff. And we were like, okay, guys, we have a possibility to go 0-6, but in the first game, we felt like power from winning early game versus Rox Tigers, and we understood that we are the same people as they are. There are no difference like in nationalities or region. You need to just play better than your opponent, and that's how we win.
Yeah. That's how you win, and that's how you've won 3 games so far, and you have a huge chance of getting out of groups here. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Albus Nox Luna with another win on the board over CLG.
Thank you very much, Shox. Albus Nox Luna doing the LCL proud here, getting the 2-0 in the head-to-head against CLG. That might do wonders for them further down the line today. But let's talk about how they crafted this victory for themselves. We talked about maybe taking them off of their unconventional picks in Anivia and Brem. That didn't seem to do CLG much good.
No, we saw them actually ban those 2 out, and then they actually went for, on ANX's side, just a kind of a standard composition here, but CLG, they end up drafting 3 winning lanes, but because of the in-game play, you see that none of those lanes actually get off the ground. The top lane has that counter that Stehos was talking about with the dive, obvious move, completely countered by the map movements. Mid lane, execution from who he was really off in this game, and then in the bottom lane, it was actually complete outplays there because Stixxay and Aphromoo weren't actually respecting that bottom lane enough.
Yeah, and even though you would say that they have 3 winning lanes, I do want to talk about ease of execution, because the composition that CLG put together, if it doesn't get rolling early, has 2 supports and pretty much 2 AD carries with no front line. Whereas when you look at Albus Nox, they have a team comp that comes online in the mid game and can team fight so incredibly well, and they have the wave clear to get them there through the Sivir, through the Victor. So I really do think that this was a little bit disrespectful to go all in on the early game and then not be able to execute in these late game team fights.
I just want to dive into one of those matchups in particular, and I usually dislike it when people say X player was playing poorly or Y, but who he... We're actually going into replay, so I'll make all my points after. We can see what happens in the early game already, because he's losing the early game here as he's missing this very crucial Mantra Q. The point is he's losing the matchup early, and we'll get back into why that matters later, but then he goes for the teleport back into the lane. He enters the gravity field, has to flash out immediately, and that eventually will lead 30 seconds later into his death, so he was definitely being pressured by the Victor. But the whole reason I wanted to bring up this particular matchup is because push is so important in League of Legends. It's so important that you get control of the game early, and in the Karma versus Victor matchup, people say, doesn't Victor push you in early? But I actually checked the numbers. Karma Q has 10 damage more than Victor Laser. In addition to that, Karma can send a Q out every 7 seconds. Victor has to send out a laser every 13 seconds. So in terms of wave push, Karma can always control that lane. In addition to that, she can empower her Q and both poke the minion wave and the enemy Victor at the same time. With good positioning, you can never get poked by both if you're Karma versus Victor. So in every single matchup, Hui should be pushing. In addition to that, he has no jungle pressure because the Graves and the Victor can't actually kill him unless Graves shows up with the red buff, and even then Flash saves you. So Hui just royally misplayed this matchup, didn't put a pressure point on the map for CLG, and then had a lot of individual errors after that.
And then in the mid game, he was never really a damage source for the team either, because he built 2 supportive items, Merc Treads, and then everybody else on his team is physical damage. And then the top laner Smurf, he just builds Thorn Mail on Poppies, stacking armor, and you can't kill him.
And that's the thing, Karma has such great base damage that you can augment with 2 offensive items and then rotate in the utility position and buff up your team. But if you're running a poke comp with Karma Jace that wants to group up later, you can just go for an early Morellonomicon into a Rabadons, and your poke will shred the enemy to bits, and you can actually get control. Hui was a glorified shield bot in the mid game because he went Merc Threads double support item.
Yeah, and I think like my final thing on that draft is just Vladimir there wouldn't actually be a bad pick at all, because you would have the Karma thrown down to the support role, and then you'd have another backup. You'd have a high magic damage dealer, so that, you know, there's something else there that you can actually kind of leverage, because it felt as though that last pick, they were like, oh, we have a poke comp. We want some type of disengage, something to keep us a little bit safer. And I feel like the Nami and the fact that they built the Karma defensive was not doing them any favors.
Good point. That Karma could have been a flex. They could have altered their composition as they saw what Albus Nox locked in. Didn't work out for them. I want to now jump to what you were talking about, the ease of execution and also the way that Albus Nox's team comp comes online in that mid game. 24 minutes into the game, we see a 3-for-0 team fight that nets them the Baron. That's going to be the tools they need to knock down those inhibs.
And this is super standard. They see a couple of members in the mid lane. They bard ulti to start it up. Opportunistic, dive onto Afro, get rid of all the CC, and then clean up the back end of the team fight. More impressively, ballsy Baron call on the back end of it. They execute nicely, and they pick up the buff that's going to close out the game ultimately. This was just super clean.
Yeah, and it shows what composition failure CLG has if they fall behind. And this is exactly the reason they need to be playing with forward pressure so they can avoid this entire scenario. Because if this comp falls behind, there's not much CLG can do out here. But they have the tools, just like Zyrene pointed out earlier, to push in bot, pressure that lane, pressure in the mid lane, invade the enemy jungle, start rotating on the map. Instead, they just played super passive, got picked out, got individually outplayed, and Albus Nox Luna 100% deserved this victory.
And I love to see gold graphs like that, because a gold graph that looks like that, it shows that a team is executing properly, and they're the ones pushing their snowball forward, right? It was very, very clean the whole way through. It's time now to award player of the game. It's going to go to the man who you saw on your screen getting interviewed, PvP, stay host there. I mean, we talked about, it might be an obvious move, but if he doesn't make that move, that could have been the snowball going in the other direction early game for CLG.
Yeah, I really do think the top lane counter gank into the bottom lane gank where he picked up the kill, and then the rotation into the mid lane just showed that this guy was tracking them around Summoner's Rift and knew where his pressure point was, so he was able to facilitate all that early game play.
All right, well, early game for Albus Nox translating into late game, so they looked good across the board here. But as we look forward, they are now 3-1, gentlemen, 2-0 over CLG. Is this going to be the first time we see a wildcard team make it out of groups?
Yep. 100%. I think that when you see that play, I mean, they look much more solid and fundamentally sound than we thought they were going to be. We knew that they had some cheesy stuff or some unconventional picks, but when they go back to a standard comp, they played the laning phase well, only fell behind in the bottom lane. And I think that is good enough right now to get it done against G2, so they should make it out.
I'm running the scenarios in my head right here, but barring a major collapse from Rox Tigers, CLG at best can tie them 3-3, right?
It's going to be difficult. I don't want to try and run it in my head right now.
I think they are pretty much qualified unless Rox really starts dropping all their games.
But being 3-1, that sets them up beautifully. So here we go. ANX looking good after game 2 of the day. Join us on the other side of the break when G2 faces off against CLG.
We are readying up for our second match of the day between Albus Nox Luna and Counter Logic Gaming. Steos, here's Steos. Where's the Tempered Fate? He's caught himself.
He has no flash either.
Afro moves the target, no flash. Too early on the life binding. End of the line. 6-8 running for his life. Tempered Fate. Look for the target to hit. That's good. Stick stays down.
They catch Hui.
It's out. Pin onto Afro move. Afro's down. Hui gets knocked up into the air. He's exhausted. Albus Nox have comboed everything perfectly. Albus Nox Luna have got one giant foot in the door to Chicago.
Dare to be different. Revel